First of all, I'd like to just say good morning. My name is I.D. Thompson, and currently I serve as the president of the Choctaw County High School Alumni Association. And today I'm talking to three gentlemen who have agreed to share their story, their relationship with Choctaw County High School. Two of them are former students. One of them is Mr. Willie Joe Woods, who graduated from Choctaw County High School in 1961. And then we have Mr. Kenny B. Ashford, who graduated in 1956. But we're also favored to have one of our former teachers with us today, and that is Mr. James Allen Minor. He served here from 1966 to 1969. So I want to thank them for agreeing to talk to us today. We're seeking to capture their story so that you might know what it was like to be a student, and also what it was like to teach in what I like to call the historic Choctaw County High School. So we'll start this conversation. I'm just going to sit back and listen, but we're going to start this conversation with Mr. Willie Joe Woods, and I'm just asking him to tell us what it was like to go to school in Choctaw County, where he went, where he started, and then what it was like to attend the high school. Mr. Woods, thank you, and we'll want to hear from you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, afternoon, whatever time of day it is. It's just been recorded, but right now it's morning. I was born and reared here in Choctaw County. I went to school here in this Friendship Missionary Baptist Church is my home church. It's a family church. I come from a family of 8, 4 boys and 4 girls. And my father served as a deacon at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. My mother sung in the choir at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. But my education started when I was at 6 years old here at Ackerman Elementary School. At the time, it was a wood frame building. We had no inside plumbing, outdoor plumbing, bathroom facility, even the cafeteria was outside. We had to leave outside the main building to go to the cafeteria. And we had the structure of the building, so it was a wood frame building, and that the classroom was relatively, they were small classrooms, and they had more than one class in the same room because of the size of the building. And we had a teacher. My first grade teacher was a teacher named Mrs. Fisher. I never will forget her. And we didn't have a kindergarten. We didn't have preschool. What we had then, we had we called a primer, a pre-primer, and a primer book. And that's what it determined when you read the pre-primer book. If you could read that, Ron, Jane, Ron, and C. Sally, Ron, Dick had the ball, Dick threw the ball, and then if you were able to accomplish that book, then they will advance you to the primer book, and then we went from there to the second grade. But my years here at Ackerman, it was very unique in that we had separate schools at the time out here. And of course, in most of our books that we got back then, they were what we call hand-me-down books. They were passed from one school, which was the white school, passed to the colored school at the time. And most of our education, I guess you would call it, would be somewhat second class education. But our teachers that we had back then, they were very stern, very dedicated and concerned. They make sure that all the kids that they taught, they was well trained. They took their time. They had patience with you, and they worked with you to make sure that you accomplish your goals. And one of the things that I'll never forget, when we had spelling, you would have to stand up and spell the word, and you have to recite the word, and they make sure that you didn't go untaught. everything then was very thorough. That if you didn't spell the word, then they have you sit down. And you go over there and get with another student, and that student will work with you. They're a little bit brighter than you, what you were. They help you. And then when you come back, then they're going to ask you to spell that same word again. And then if you didn't spell that word again, then there were some consequences if you didn't spell it. But it was stern, but it was well disciplined. I ended up, when I was in the 11th, in the 10th grade, we moved from the old high school to the new high school, which was a brick structured building. And I went there in the 11th grade when I went to Ackerman High School. And that's where I graduated from in 1961. And from there, I went to Tuskegee for one semester there. I had a brother that was there. And after he left, then I came back home, and I went to work, and I worked for a while, and I went to spend one semester at Mississippi Valley, 1 quarter at Mississippi Valley, and I went back to work again because I didn't have any money to continue my education, and so and I worked for a while, then stayed with a brother who was in the military for almost about a year, a little over a year. And I had saved up enough money, and then when I came back to Mississippi, I enrolled at Jackson State University. And that was where I graduated from in 1967 from Jackson State University.
Thank you, Mr. Wood, for sharing that. Mr. Kennedy Ashford, look you to tell your story. And you can, we'll just focus out here as you talk to us in response.
Yes. Good morning to each everyone. And I started at Rockport United School. And I was at Rockport until I was bused to Ackerman. And when I rebused to Ackerman, I really seen the light. But I still didn't get the opportunity in the teaching that you people get now, which is great. Because when I was at Ackerman School, I played ball. And I was great in ball playing. I was great in running, great in jumping. I was jumping 6 feet high when I first came into high school. And I didn't believe nobody could beat me doing nothing. And as far as the books, I thought I didn't need any books because I was so great in basketball, football, running, and jumping. So I learned from my leaders, there was my friends, how to play pity pat. And I thought pity pat would get me where I wanted to go. But pity pat would not get you where you want to go. Learning from the books would get you where you want to go. But I continued. And I had all my friends was very smart. DeVos, Paris, John Harris Davis, all them was my classmates. And all them was smart. All them kept me in school. I just learned how to play basketball, football, run, and jump, and didn't get that education. So I had to do the 12th grade twice because I wouldn't do a book. I thought I was good enough to go without doing the book. That at the time, my teacher was Miss Howe. So she flunked me. But all of my classmates was wanting to do this notebook for me. And I said, no, because I thought I was too popular. And I left in '56 after I graduated. I was in the field with my dad. But my mom said I was going to Russ College. I earned scholarships at all junior colleges in the South. But my mom, back at the time then, your mom picked where you was going and told you where you was going. But after my mom went to St. Louis to visit my daughter, and I was under my dad, which my dad and me got along real good. So my dad told me, he said, all the boys is leaving. Why don't you leave? And I drove truck for my uncle for 50 cents, $5 a day, hauling putwood. And I left out of here going to Chicago. And when I got to Chicago, I was supposed to come back to Russ College in July, I think it was. But when I got there and got in the lights, everything changed. When John Davis came back to go to Russ College, he said, Kenny, are you ready to go? I said, I'm gonna stay and get one more check before I leave. But I knew I wasn't coming back because the only famous people in Mississippi was teachers, preachers, and soldiers, and no job at all. I worked back here too before I left for Chicago. I worked back here for 50 cents a day for Bob Cooker, which was the white guy. Paid us 50 cents a day to sit out pine. And I got a chance to see all them pines that sit out when I come back that he was selling to, you know, to make his living. But to go back, I was in Chicago. I made a lot of money for to be a stupid kid. But when I first got there, Mr. Keller used to have us to do bricks, how to do bricks. And I thought that was the craziest thing in the world. So I don't want to know how to do no brick. What am I going to do with brick? But when I first got to Chicago, I could have got a job laying brick for $20 an hour. But I wasn't able to do that. But that didn't stop me. I kept going. I had a lot of jobs in Chicago. And I made a lot of money in Chicago. But I didn't know how to handle it. I was a party animal. And I didn't know how to handle my money. But I still came out on top, and I don't regret my going to Chicago because I really made a super good living. And that come from my mother teaching me and ironing, you know. But it hadn't been for that, I always worked. And I was a party animal, but I was a party animal to 12 o'clock because my mom didn't allow me to be out no longer than 12 o'clock. I don't care how good the party were. I would get up and leave. So I would be able to go to work that next day. And I continued that. So I was able to do so much with the little money I was making. I knew how to pay myself first. I learned that, but I didn't learn it here. I learned that after I got to Chicago. Pay yourself first, and whatever you have left, then spend that. So, and I learned that, and it came out to keep me on top. And those were some of the things that I learned. And to back it up, to go back, when I first came to Akron School, I was wild. I had never been to Akron but 2 or 3 times in the wagon. But when I came here, things were just so completely different from when I was back in Rockport. It was the classes, you in one room. When I was in Rockport, in grammar school, I was in one room. When I got to Akron, I still was in one room, but they had like 2 classes in one room because they didn't have the space. And I also went to the old school, what we call over on the hill. And that was it. Under Mr. Keller, Mr. White, and Ms. Ford, and a lot of more teachers that I've forgotten their name. But I learned more from them than I did any other. But I can't forget how I used to play ball. That was my heart.
All right.
And I loved to play. And that's what I did until I left here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Ashford. Mr. Mount, you have a different experience than they did. But you came into this school district and taught our students. So tell us a little bit about how you got here and what did you find when you got here and what that was like.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be able to expound on a few of the past things that we were involved in during my tenure. But before my tenure, I had an opportunity to get a quality education at Alcorn State University. And I acquired this education through music scholarship. I played music at Alcorn State University and earned a music scholarship to learn how to teach agriculture. But agriculture was my heart. My mother decided on my occupation, and she decided on the type of degree I would have. As Mr. Ashford indicated, the mother made a lot of decisions back then. My mother made a lot of decisions for me. I earned a full music scholarship to Mississippi Valley State back in 1962. But my mother told me I could not utilize that scholarship because I was going to Alcorn, and I was going to Alcorn in agriculture. So I had to turn down a full music scholarship under Mr. Boone at that time at Valley State, and then go to Alcorn with no scholarship. In the process, I earned a scholarship. I was blessed with a lot of experiences at Alcorn, and I was also blessed with a lot of quality instructors. Most of our instructors had a vision, and in their vision, they tried to expound on their vision as they were teaching you. I learned quite a bit. Many times, we as black people thought we didn't have very much, but they put in our mind to put a value on some of the things we did have. And when we got this type of information, we started looking at, well, we're not so bad off after all. We just don't have the luscious amount that other people have to spend in different ways. But after graduating from Alcorn, I received an opportunity to be a band director at George Washington Carver High School in Philadelphia. Mr. Gambrell was the ag teacher in Akron, Mississippi, and he wanted to go home to DeKalb and work in DeKalb. He wanted to leave Akron. So I was at George Washington Carver in Philadelphia, and most of you should know by now what was going on in Philadelphia at that time. I was there, and that was the time they found the young men in the pond levee. And so much turmoil was in Philadelphia that my mother advised me to leave Philadelphia. When she advised me to leave Philadelphia, Mr. Gambrell communicated to me if I would come to Akron, he would go to DeKalb. So I took him up, and I came to Akron to teach agriculture, where Mr. Gambrell was teaching agriculture, and he went back home. So that my career started in '66 in Akron, Mississippi, in teaching. While here in Akron, Akron did not have a band. We didn't have any equipment, didn't have any instruments or anything like that. But I had the musical experience, you know, and I was able to teach music because I had a minor in music from Alcorn. And they said, if you would teach agriculture and help us organize a band, we would pay you 2 salaries. So I had a salary for teaching agriculture, and they gave me $100 a month if I would start the band. So I started the band here, and I was teaching agriculture at the same time. I was also blessed to have a person, Miss Keller. Miss Keller was a person that would carry me throughout the whole community. And she introduced me to all the different key communities throughout the county. And I learned how to work with the adults as well as the students in the community. And as you can see, these adults influenced my way of handling the students. They didn't want me to allow those students to get away with anything. And those parents knew me personally, and all I had to do is tell them about their child, and they would do the rest. So I became a strong disciplinarian because of that, and I didn't allow our students to just rat off or do anything like they wanted to do. And I have a thing now that I'm learning that they say I was a strong disciplinarian. But anyway, it caused me to look seriously at why I was instructing our students in such detail, and how I wouldn't allow them to not utilize their time to the fullest and maximize their effort in the classroom. And most of them can tell you now that when I was instructing them, I didn't allow any playing or anything. It was just straight to the point, do exactly as I'm instructing you to do, and no other effort is going to be required of you. But if you did not perform up to the level in which I expected you to learn, then there were consequences. And many of them know me now as the one that utilized the consequences. But anyway, in the students that I taught, many of them went on. Some became welders, some bricklayers, some electricians, some carpenters, some farmers. I mean, great farmers. And I tried to instill to them the importance of understanding what they have. Most of them did not see or earn any money at home while they were working. So they didn't know the value of what they had. And my job was to try to instill in them that they weren't poor as they thought they were. And if they would just only look at what they have and give it a value, they'll find out how wealthy they were. And today, many of them are realizing they were wealthy back then and didn't know it. Because they had resources, they had land, they had a home, they had food, they had plenty of food. Where now a lot of people don't have enough from one week to the other. Now, in teaching our children, I also instructed the adults. I would open up the shop on the weekend to teach the adults different trades. If they would come in on the weekend, or either if they could come in on the weekend, I would open the shop up at night and allow them to come in at night and try to learn different skills. Especially if they were working on equipment or something like that, I would work with them at night. And then those students, each student had to have one major project that he could utilize at home. And this is how I said that. Each student had to select one major project that they could utilize at home. Now, many of them, we had some to select building a screen door. Many of them didn't have screen doors at home. Some learned how to lay bricks, at home, to level up their homes and things and make the home more comfortable. Each one had to do a project that they could do at home. And if they did not perform, I would go to their home to see what they really need. And their parents would also tell me how they are performing at what that project was. So I worked with the parents as well as the students. And it was a passion of mine to make sure that my students performed to the level I expected them and to the level that they could perform. Now, if they fell a little short, I had consequences. And I didn't accept anything less. I'll give you one example. We had a young man in a class, and he had a deformed leg, but he had a great mind. And the teachers would tell me, you know, he's expecting to get pitied, you know, from everything he's doing. And when he came to my class, I realized that he had a good ability to do a lot of things. And he thought he was going to get by in my class like the other teachers. Well, it took a little while for him to understand that there were consequences for not performing. And I didn't allow him to come to my class just because he had a deformed leg and do nothing. So I used some friendly persuasion to get his mind in the right position. And that young man, he learned how to read rulers. He ended up making screen doors, and he ended up being one of the top performers in the class. And all the other teachers said, how in the world did you get him to do all these things in your class? He won't do anything in ours. I said, you have to use a different technique with different students. And mine was a little friendly persuasion. Most of the students that I've taught understand that there was a requirement to do their best. And less was not acceptable. And when I found out they weren't performing in other classes, I had consequences. I'll give you another example. One of the families had two sons. One was in one class, one was in the other class. But his mother came to me and told me that he was going to my class and he wasn't going to anybody else's class because he was at home during the school time. And she brought him to me to discipline him because he wasn't going to the other classes. I tried to encourage her not to, allow me to do that, but she insisted that I teach him the importance of going to the other classes. And I did. And the young man ended up, he was good in my class, but he ended up passing and doing well in other classes. But he had to learn that it was important for him to utilize his time in the other classes as well as my class. I think I had a little fear in him or something when he got to my class, so he wouldn't miss my class.
Let me just, was it the fear or was it the relationship that you had with the parent and that you all were on the same page and that what you wanted for their child was also what they wanted for their child, and so you agreed on that, and you were able to come together, and they knew that you had some control because obviously you were getting what you wanted, and so they said, well, help us get what we want in these other classes.
Well, that was it, because see, as I was working with adults as well as the students, and I developed a relationship with the parents, that they would want the same thing for their child.
I'm amazed at this story about how you would give these student projects, but these projects were designed to improve home. They were home improvement projects, if you will. Right. That you would actually not only expect, but you would inspect. to make sure that they were actually being. And I just want to ask, and the school system, and I think I know the answer, but the school system had no problem with that, or didn't even get involved in what you were doing anyhow, because you were at the all-black school and they didn't do a lot of monitoring of what you did, or just how did that work?
Well, I was blessed that the superintendent as well as the principal provided me some funds to provide material for them to use. So I bought material for them to do their projects. Mm-hmm. And each person had to use these materials, to do their project. And that was one of the key things that I was utilizing, the funds that the superintendent as well as the principal was providing me for the student. This was one of the best ways to teach them. Hands-on was one of the great things back then, but that wasn't enough for me because I knew that they needed to learn more. Being able to read the root, being able to interpret the information from the page was important. If they couldn't read, I had to deal with reading. If they couldn't read the root or measure, I had to deal with that. Wherever they were, I had to utilize that to help them perform to the level in which I wanted them to perform. And they had to satisfy me on performance. And if they did not, then sometimes the friendly persuasion jumped into the equation.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. Wow, that's interesting. That's powerful stuff. That's powerful stuff. I think any young teacher, school administrators today could learn a lesson from what you just shared with us about that. But I want to come back to you, Mr. Woods. So you came to the school. You were the student. You were the learner.
Yes.
Under Mr. Keller, Mr. White, and these teachers. So you did go to college. You finished at Jackson State, V.I. Love. So,
yes.
what was the impact that these teachers? You didn't have Mr. Minor, but you had Mr. Keller, Ms. White, Mr. White. Those teachers. What was their impact? What was their relationship with you as a student like, or with your parents? Well, how did it make a difference?
Well, at an early age, my parents as well as my teachers, they encourage us, and also like Mr. Minor was saying earlier, they put fear in your heart at an early age, and you knew what that fear was. And if you didn't perform the way they wanted you to perform, there were consequences. Mm-hmm. And then once you deal with those consequences, you don't want a repeat of those same consequences again. So that was encouragement not to have to deal with those consequences if you didn't perform at the level in which they wanted you to perform. And so I think that was a big incentive there at an early age. They instilled us in also respect. Always respect your elders. Respect your teachers. Respect people in the community. And all those things blending in together, that was a great motivator for us once we got to a certain point. And from observation, that what the economic conditions that which we grew up under, that was another incentive that we didn't want to stay in the same position that we were in economically. But we always want to do better. We want something better. We would go to the movie theaters downtown. We would walk through the white neighborhood and we would see that nice homes that they had over there versus the homes that we had in our neighborhood. And we wanted something that looked like theirs. But we knew in order to get that, it was going to take some economic, some money to do it, and education was our outlet. And that's what the older people, our parents, our teachers, that's what they instilled in us, the education.
You say that your parents had expectations, and they made those expectations clear.
Yes.
And if you did not meet them, there were consequences.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't hesitate to implement those consequences,
yes,
so that next time around you did what you needed to do. And then you said respect. So all of this, you think, laid the foundation for your success once you got to school.
Yes.
The expectation, consequences if you did not meet respect for your elders.
Exactly. Yeah. And they say that back then, or when I was a child growing up, everybody in the neighborhood, everybody in the community, they knew you, they knew your parents. And if you got out of line or said something that was going to be embarrassing to your family, those people in the community, they would make correction with you. They would chastise you.
Okay.
They had their permission from the parent to chastise you, make correction. And then once they report to your parents, and I had to correct your child, he said something that was out of line, he did something that was out of line. Then once it got back to the parents, then that was another discipline that you're going to have to deal with. And theirs is going to be much more severe. We already knew that when it got back to home, what we had to deal with there. So all that was encouragement for us to try to stay in line, to do the things that was correct.
Now, Mr. Ashford, is that your story as well? Now, I heard from you that you, I heard party animal at some point, I think in your dialogue, and I certainly heard a lot of playing ball, a lot of athleticism, and that you spent a lot of time there. So, and not as much in your books. So how did you manage to parlay that? That is, how did you manage not to be held to the high standard in your books? And you got away with it.
I got away with it because I was a good ball player. And my coach was Mr. Thomas. So we had to have a standing to play ball. And my coach always got me through because I always was good in math. And he was the math teacher. And I always did good in math, but like all the other classes, nobody chastised.
There was no Mr. Minor,
Right.
to say, I'll let you play ball, you're getting my lesson, but you can't play ball if you can't get Miss So-and-so lesson. You didn't have that.
I didn't have that. I had, and my coach got me through a lot of stuff by not having that. And now that's what I say. You have to have the knowledge to do these things if your coach and your teachers is not making you do that. And my classmates, they helped me. They did my work for me because I was a good ball player.
They did your work so that you could be on the floor,
Right.
on the field, game time.
Right.
And if they knew that you had an assignment that was due, they either did it for you or they helped you to do it or do enough to pass.
They helped me to do it, and they did it. I didn't have. I was so popular, by being good.
Let me ask you this: any regrets?
No regret as far as making money and learning. And to back it up, I used to go to the bank down here and borrow money and pay a dime, get $5, borrow $5 on my dad's name. All I had to do was tell the banker who my dad was, and he would lend me $5, which I owe him $5 now. And he charged 10 cents on that each fallacy. But I never paid it back. And those were some of the things, but I was doing these things, but my parents ain't knowing nothing about it. They never found out about it. But my mother, she was very hard on me. I got more whoopings from my mom by doing things because I love to play. I just love to play. And they would send me to the spring to get water. And I would have the bucket, go to the spring. Then I would meet my friend. And then I would start playing. And we might play for an hour. But then when I get back home, I'm getting a whooping for not coming back. And I always did things for the older people. I was always a good kid with the older people. Like they wanted water, glass of water, I go get it. The other boys wouldn't do that. So they all thought I was the best. But they didn't know that I was the worst when I got out of their sight. I did all these things in their sight that they wanted me to do. But like the other boys, they didn't want to do this. They stumped their feet and all this stuff. But I was nice. I treated all the old folks nice, and they treated me nice. And that was the biggest learning that I got through the old folks, because I did a lot of dealing with them. I worked with them. Like they was working, I worked on the gas line, putting in the tanks, in the ground. I used to work with my uncle doing that. And I was making a little money, but I wasn't making nothing. Comparison. Because he was just only giving me a nickel or a dime because I was helping him. And you know, down with them hard digs, put them tanks in the ground, 6 feet deep in that hard clay. So he would give me the pick, and I'd get down there and pick it up, and then he would throw the dirt out. Which, doing the picking was the hard thing. But I was a young man then.
That's right.
It didn't matter. So.
Mr. Planner, we're going to come around for one more round, and I know that our time is drawing near for this time, and I really appreciate it. But now, you're back. It's now 2022. You were here in, you left here in 1969. Yes. And so you're now back with some students who graduated 50 years later.
Yes.
And you had a chance to spend some time with them. So what do you think about the products, those graduates of Choctaw County High School? You were here just a year before the last class would graduate in 1970, and the first class to integrate in 1971. So what has been like to interact with these children? What are some of your thoughts about them?
Well, I never left or lost contact with the students that I was involved with. They continue to call me names. Some in Chicago, wherever they are, they will still call me now and keep me informed. I was so impressed when I found out that one of the classes that I dealt with, 65% of them end up graduating as honor students. I mean, you think about that. 65% of the students in the class were honor students. And I'm still impressed on that.
That's impressive.
And we have lawyers. Out of the students that I had a chance to meet with, we have lawyers, we have teachers, instructors, we have, many of them have their own businesses. The ones that I instruct, they have their own businesses. Many of them, we have some contractors, we have welders, we have brick masons. I've got a chance to communicate with them yesterday about how well they are doing. And then we have some farmers that are doing well. And as one of the farmers indicated to me, he didn't know how well he was doing until he continued to listen to some of the things I was telling him about the farm and how he could develop to be a farmer that can be self-sufficient and then at the same time be profitable. Back then, many of the children never saw money working at home. The parents never did give them any money. It was just a chore that they had to do.
Right.
But since then, they learned how valuable that farm experience was for them. But at the time, they didn't see it. And now they see how great it was and what a value it was in their lives to continue to do and follow the instruction that I was giving them as students.
So let me ask one last question. How did the experience at Choctaw County impact the rest of your life when you left here?
Well, when I left here, I always had the aspiration that I wanted to be a county agent. I always, even growing up, I wanted to be a county agent.
Now, why did you want to be a county agent?
A county agent was considered to be the top man in the community. He was looked above preachers, teachers, and all. He was considered to be the man in the community. He's always sometimes better known than senators and representatives in the community. And one thing, he had a relationship with the parents and the teachers and the children and all, and he was just thought of kind of on a high level as being the top person in the community. I wanted to be the county agent because no black man at that time was a county agent. And that was my aspiration, to be a county agent. And my mother always told me that if I continued to work, I make to be a county agent if I got the right training and continue to develop. I had an opportunity to go to the University of Florida. I also had an opportunity to go to Mississippi State University and receive degrees. And we also received the main degree from Alcorn, which I feel was the backbone to my success in life, was Alcorn State University, and the instruction that I received while I was there. Now, I received some other instruction all along the line. I had a chance to do research for Mississippi State University in the area of cotton. I'm one of the person that helped to develop the female trap. That was the breaking point in controlling boll weevils in the state of Mississippi and all over the South. I was involved in that project, and really I was the person that drew up the hypotenuse for that project. And it ended up being a big success for Mississippi State, and they got a lot of money out of it. Not only that, I had an opportunity to share with the people down at the University of Florida, where I ended up teaching some of the students in Florida, because they say I was so well prepared when I got to the University of Florida that they thought I should have been the instructor at the University of Florida, but I wasn't. But it helped me to do some more projects. I learned how to utilize a lot of resources that the University of Florida was doing at that time. And we spreaded it all the way up in North Carolina. I had an opportunity to share with North Carolina, different other states, some of the experiences that I had.
Now, I see Mr. Ashley here ready to jump in.
I want to add also, too, that by coming back here and seeing my nephews and all of them with the college, and they're coming back in, they all was teachers, all my classmates was teachers, and I'm going, well, what happened to me? And then I realized that I missed all this when I was in school. I didn't do the thing that they was doing to put them where they are.
So, I asked the question, any regrets, but no regrets, but an eye-opener as to what could have been or what might have been.
Right.
And why.
Yes.
Very good.
And like I said, I made a lot of money, but I worked a lot of jobs. I worked in, if you ever heard of the stockyard?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Back in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I had to ride the bus, and I worked in the stockyard. And I'm smelling like cows. Everybody on the bus is turning their nose down. But because I didn't have no change in clothes, I had to wear the same thing that I worked in the stockyard.
Wow.
And, but I made money. And I never was bad a job. I worked 2 jobs.
Okay. You didn't mind working.
I didn't mind working because I wanted to have my money.
Yes.
I had it and didn't know how to have it.
Mr. Wood, any last thoughts and reflection on your experience? You're back now for the reunion. Now you graduated in 1961, I believe. So it's been 60 years, a little better, since you graduated.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would say growing up in a community like Choctaw County, it gave me a lot of, well, I learned a lot the hard way, because we had to make a lot of sacrifices. And everything that we got in my parents instilled in me. If you want something, you got to work for it. Okay. And also that my parents and my teachers as well, some of the teachers I had in the Choctaw County school system, they always instilled in me that don't spend all your money. Just put some money away. Because there's going to be a rainy day. A storm is going to come. You say, and when the storm comes, if you prepare for the storm, you can deal with the storm much better than you can if you're not prepared for the storm. So there was a lot of things that my teachers and also my parents instilled in me at an early age that it carried on with me throughout my adulthood. And as I got older, I learned, and with the experience, what they was telling me and what they were trying to teach me what to do. And I followed some of those instructions. And I found out that they paid off for me.
well, now it's interesting that you would share that with us. We're down to the end of this talk, and my last thing that I wanted to ask these gentlemen is indeed any advice for today's student. What if you had just a word or two that you could share as a life lesson with an up-and-coming high school student or elementary student alike, what would that be? What lesson, life lesson? And I don't know. We'll start with you, Brother Woods, if there's any lesson. If you would tell us, we would appreciate it.
Well, to the young people, listen, because when adults, your teachers, your parents, when they are talking to you, they are talking to you based on their life experience, what they had to deal with, and they pass on what they had to deal with to you, because they often told me that you can't get by now with what I got by with. You're gonna need more to succeed in life than what I had to deal with, and I listen to it, and that's the key to it, is listen to the teachers and your parents, because they've gone down the road that you are going to travel, and they've had that experience. Although you might think they don't know what they're talking about, but if you live long enough, you're going to find out that they was on target.
All right. Mr. Ashton, any advice for?
The advice that I would have from is listen. Be a good listener and do as your parents say. You don't know, but your parents know what is best. So accept that. It may sound like it's wrong, but in the long run, it will turn out to be better. And always, always, always learn to be home on time. Have an hour that you gotta be. You just gotta do things. But I learned all my learning come from mostly on my own, having what they call motherhood. So I don't want you to be, but you listen to, like these organizations. I learned that when you come back, be some member of some organization. Which we didn't have that when I was coming up. And I knew nothing about that. But for the young peoples now, they want to be party, but to a certain limit.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Mount, any advice for today's
Yes, there's a lot of advice that I can probably give you because through my past experiences, none of what I achieved came cheap. There are sacrifices that you must make, and you must have some goals in mind that you want to achieve in life. Now, if you have no goals, spend a lot of time, you probably would not perform to a certain level to reach those goals. I was blessed, and I had an opportunity to do some things that are helping people today. I spent plenty of time in the court system. I had an opportunity to sue the state of Mississippi. I had a chance to sue Mississippi State University. I had a chance to sue the federal government to achieve being a county agent in Mississippi. At that time, no black man had been a county agent in Mississippi. I stayed in court from 69 to 82 to achieve this for black men and women to be county agents in the state of Mississippi. So I was one of the first to be ever be appointed a black county agent in the state of Mississippi.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so very much. This is going to be a wrap on this conversation. There very well may be some other conversation, but I think what I heard in these last remarks is that, one, listen. Listen to those who have had the experiences that you are about to have, whether it's your parent, your teacher, or some other elder person that has gone through what you're getting ready to go through. They might be able to help you go through it a little bit better. That's what I'm hearing from these gentlemen. But the other thing I heard is that you need to have a purpose, set a goal, so that you have something that you'll work toward. And Mr. Miner said it well, that if you don't have a goal, you may not work as hard. You probably won't. But if you have something that you want to achieve and you're willing to work for it, you just might get it. Thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing, and we look forward to some other conversation.